been watching them all night. And then you guys show up.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full video for the Echo series, episodes 1 through 5. There are only 5 episodes. There are a bunch of Easter eggs. Obviously, it's meant to set up Daredevil Born Again, so I'll explain how it does that. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We'll start seeing more footage from Daredevil Born Again really soon, too. And I just did a post-credit scene video for that. I'll link it at the end of this and down in the description below because it's all about setting up Daredevil Born Again. Careful for spoilers if you haven't seen the series yet. We'll start at the beginning, work our way through shot by shot, talk about Easter eggs, WTF moments. Since I'm doing one video for the entire series, it's going to be a little bit shorter, and I'm just going to cover the really big stuff, like the really big Easter eggs. The reason why it's only 5 episodes and it's not 6 like the typical longer Marvel series or like 9 episodes of half-hour series that Marvel does is mostly because of the way they pace it. Reportedly, there was a deleted episode, like a whole episode that they shot and then basically got rid of at the last minute. I think what they probably did is they worked in all the footage from Hawkeye during episode 1. Like, that wasn't in the original cut of the series, but there's a lot of footage from her time on Hawkeye introducing her character because they basically use episode 1, or at least the first half of episode 1, to tell her backstory. And a big part of that happened on the Hawkeye series in flashbacks, so a lot of it is reused footage from the Hawkeye series. They created a brand new sub-brand called Marvel Spotlight that you saw in front of all the episodes with a whole new intro logo. That's based on the Marvel Spotlight comics where they would do like Ghost Rider stories that were meant to be one-offs that you didn't need to know everything that was going on in the main continuity just to understand that one story. But it is meant to be the first of many TVMA series, so there is hope that they do more hardcore adult-themed series. It's also notable because it's Marvel's first solo series for a character who is ASL, not the first disabled character they've ever done because Daredevil, probably a much more famous character, also disabled. Charlie Cox said that during episode 1, when Daredevil was fighting Echo during the flashbacks, one of the big issues that he rose in the production was how they would communicate because Daredevil is blind and Echo is deaf. So how did they communicate? And the cheat answer to that, like the workaround to that, is that Daredevil can actually read her body language using his ability. Even though he can't see with his eyes in the traditional way, he has a sort of Daredevil type of sight, like a radar type of sight. So he can read her body language, all of her cues, her stances, and sense what's coming from her. Most of the series is meant to be 5-6 months after the events of the Hawkeye series, enough time for Kingpin to have recovered so that he can walk around with that little eye patch on. But throughout the series, there are many flashbacks to much earlier in the timeline, to her childhood and to ancient history. Episode 1 was titled Chafa. That's a reference to the very first member of the Choctaw Nation. They opened the episode with an MCU version of the Choctaws' origin story myth in real life. Like, this whole concept of the mound is part of the real-life Choctaws' origin story myth. What they've done for the MCU version, though, is they make it a little more cosmic. So what they're saying is that her ancestors were actually cosmic beings living in another dimension, like a little pocket dimension here, that was destroyed, throwing them into the normal MCU dimension, where they were transformed into humans, but retaining some of their cosmic power. Notice when you see them drinking from the pool, you see the spiral. It's like the spiral galaxy. That's because they're in a higher dimension when this is happening. Like, this is meant to look like the Milky Way galaxy. When she drinks from the pool, you can see her literally scooping up a galaxy and consuming it. Without more context, my assumption is the reason why this pocket dimension of theirs was destroyed and they had to flee to the main MCU dimension was probably something to do with the Kang multiverse, where all the incursions that are happening in the lead up to Avengers 5 and Avengers 6 Secret Wars. Just because that's pretty much where all this cosmic stuff is headed in the MCU. So if there's like a root cause for chaos happening in the MCU in a cosmic sense right now, it has something to do with Secret Wars and all the different universes collapsing. Right now in the MCU, slowly, Doctor Strange is going around watching all these incursions, basically dimensions, other universes, all slowly collapsing, colliding with each other, until there's nothing left. But because the Kang Multiverse War is happening across the timeline, this is happening to them at the beginning of the timeline, like the very beginning of time in the MCU, right after the Big Bang. You probably recognize the actress here. It's Julia Jones. She was in Twilight. She was in The Mandalorian Season 1. She's done a bunch of other stuff. She's meant to be the direct ancestor of Echo in present day, which is why she keeps having the visions of her and the other female members of her family line. They basically explain that she passes her cosmic abilities on biologically through her genetic line. So essentially a big part of the series is Echo starts to have these visions more and more as her unlocking these abilities within her. The same way that Peter Quill unlocks his celestial powers when he's near Ego the Living Planet. I don't think that makes Echo a celestial. I think she's something a little bit different. Her powers are more on the level of, say, like Captain America. So it's not like she's part god or anything like that. Like, she's not that powerful. We start getting flashbacks to her childhood with her cousin, who she also felt like was her sister. We meet more of her family. We meet her mother, who figures in heavily to the entire series. The other really important thing that you probably noticed too is that the person who's playing the adult version of her cousin Bonnie is Devry Jacobs, who also plays Kahorti during What If Season 2. She'll be back during What If Season 3, but she's like a really big Native American cosmic character now, powered up by the Tesseract. Super powerful, probably eventually going to show up in live action at some point, but for those of you that are wondering, Kahorti is not meant to be the same character as either Echo or Bonnie here. They're like completely different characters. It's just a coincidence that this actress is playing this other person in real life. She's already talked about playing Kahorti in real life, and I'm sure Kevin Feige would let her come back as the live-action version of that character in something like Secret Wars, but I don't think there's a plan right now in the next couple of years. Like, if she does come back in live action, Kahorti would be in Secret Wars. We start to see the bird showing up. The bird itself is meant to be a representation of her ancestors, like her ancestor's spirit who acts as a herald for danger, warning her when bad things are about to happen, and it happens throughout their entire family's history. Her mother also explains to her that the original Choctaw also trained those birds as a sort of early warning detection system that would bang on trees when trouble was on the way. So in present day, they also want you to think that the bird is basically her mother's spirit who's come back to warn her as an adult. They don't really get into her father's backstory too much, just the idea that he's involved in something shady on the reservation and has something to do with Kingpin, and that's how he got the job with Kingpin through Henry with the Tracksuit Bros, and how they wound up in New York City when Maya was a little girl. Then they jump to all the flashbacks that we saw in the Hawkeye series. This is basically all reused footage from Hawkeye. We see the scene where he gets ready to take her for ice cream because her father goes on a job for Kingpin. They show us the ice cream scene a couple episodes later where Kingpin basically beats the life out of the ice cream vendor. It was in all the trailers. Maya watches it, is not bothered by it, and it gives Kingpin pause, like he gets this idea in his head like, oh, you're kind of like me, and he takes her on as sort of like a surrogate daughter. And if it wasn't clear, yes, he is manipulating her throughout her entire life, just kind of pushing her around, making her do whatever he wants her to do, but he does care for her in his very toxic kind of way. Notice all the stories that her father told her about dragons living in a different world. If they were able to come into our world, like our dimension, they would be much more powerful. That's a reference to a lot of things we saw in like the Shang-Chi movie, things that are actually real in the MCU, like we've actually seen dragons flying around. When he tells her that she needs to learn to jump between two worlds, it's a reference to the cosmic side of her origin story, like it's foreshadowing for her unlocking her powers and dealing with her cosmic backstory, but also learning to balance both sides of her life, her Choctaw life, like her true heritage, and her life with Kingpin, her very violent backstory. They jump forward in the timeline. She sees her father killed by Hawkeye in his Ronin gear, then finds out eventually that Kingpin is the person that tipped Hawkeye off, and he killed his father. So Kingpin was essentially trying to get rid of her father, using Hawkeye to do it. This is actually meant to be an Easter egg for Echo's backstory in the comics, only Daredevil was swapped for Hawkeye in the MCU version. In the comics, Kingpin killed her father, then lied to her when she was younger, telling her that Daredevil killed him, trained her to be his weapon, and then set her against Daredevil, just hoping that she would kill Daredevil for him. Basically, in the MCU, Kingpin did the exact same thing, but with Hawkeye. But it takes a long time for that to happen, and remember, her father was killed during the 5-year time jump, so that's happening while everybody has been snapped, confirming that Kingpin was not snapped. That's probably one of the ways he was able to seize power in New York City and become the boss of bosses again. They already confirmed that everything from the Marvel Netflix series, all of them are canon to the MCU. So everything that happened on Daredevil Season 3 when he was arrested, when he almost wound up running for mayor but then got arrested, that's canon. So at some point, he had to rebuild his power base. That probably happened during the 5-year time jump. We see her stealing the bike, then turning it on the cops, basically just an act of aggression on her part. She's just acting out. Kingpin shows up to pull her out of police custody. Notice how the police are afraid of him. This is still during the 5-year time jump. So basically the cops, even now, are letting Kingpin do whatever he wants to do. This is where he starts to give her actual jobs to do within his organization, basically going and killing people, beating the crap out of people, to hope that it'll get the aggression out of her system. The first job he actually sends her on is the one that we saw in all the trailers where she knocks around all the other rival organizations that are trying to pull a fast one on Kingpin. They explain that when this is happening, she's supposed to be 18, 19 years old, basically still a teenager. She's never killed anyone, so when she kills this dude in the middle of this fight, it's the first time she's ever done this. They said that it's meant to be transformative, kind of in a toxic way for her, and then she runs into Daredevil, who shows up because he was cased in the joint, saying that they ruined his chances. He was probably trying to trace these men back to Kingpin, and because they killed all of them, he can't do that now. So that's why Daredevil was pissed at her. He basically kicks her ass, and notice that his red costume is meant to be exactly the same red costume that he wore during the Daredevil Netflix series. That's because this is taking place during the 5-year time jump long before the events of She-Hulk, before he gets that yellow and red costume. Notice Kingpin congratulates her like she lasted longer than any of the other men under his organization against Daredevil, but she still got her ass kicked. She winds up taking command of the Tracksuit Bros for Kingpin, and just a bunch of years go by. We see a flashback to the events of the Hawkeye series after the 5-year time jump, after everybody's come back. Her killing a whole bunch of people for Kingpin, just getting rid of anybody that he wants to get rid of. Then we see the end of the Hawkeye series after she finally confronts Kingpin with the truth about killing her father, and she takes off on the run, and about 5-6 months go by, and we see her at the gas station. She's on her way back to the Choctaw Nation to hide out from Kingpin's men, anybody else that wants to come after her, basically retaliate against her. They call her, quote-unquote, the King Killer, because she thinks that she killed Kingpin, even though we know that's not true. There's a bounty on her head, and basically everybody's trying to kill her, track her down so they can collect on it. But what I think actually happened is that Kingpin himself put the bounty on his head to try and get her back. That's probably why the stipulation of the bounty was being turned in alive, not dead or alive. The minute she gets back to the reservation she grew up on, she starts having visions of Chafa and her ancestors, like she begins to slowly unlock her powers. When she runs into her cousin Biscuits again, the funny thing about Biscuits, it's not really an Easter egg, but it almost seems like everybody on the show wants to protect Biscuits, like he's the most important character on that reservation. Like anytime anything bad happens, everyone's always worried about Biscuits first. Like, is Biscuits okay? Something bad's gonna happen to him if Echo stays around. But his dog's name is Billy Jack. That is an Easter egg in real life for the movie about a mixed-race Native American who defends a school against an angry mob of townspeople. It's a classic movie if you haven't seen it. We find out that her father's old partner in crime, Henry, runs the skate rink. They even have a Trump joke, "Make America Skate Again." Vicky turns out to be a plant working in Kingpin's organization, but he's super low on the totem pole, and he's just working there looking for Echo, trying to work his way up the ladder by turning her in. The way they explain it, though, Kingpin owns a shipping organization, amongst many other organizations probably. Shipping just happens to be one of his businesses. And in this part of Oklahoma, Henry just runs this part of the operation. So he's kind of like an underboss for Kingpin in this part of the country. That explains how her father originally got the job with Kingpin in the Tracksuit Bros. When she starts talking to Henry about maybe it being time for a queen, for a brief second, it sounds like she wants to take over Kingpin's organization, but that just feels insurmountable. Like it is an enormous organization with way more powerful bosses that she would have to kill before that could happen. Obviously, by the end of the series, that doesn't wind up happening. They kind of wind up dropping that plot point. Like, she seems like she backs off of that idea pretty quickly. Then they reveal the Kingpin is now awake. It seems like he's been awake, like he's been on the edge of death for a while, for a couple months, recuperating in this hospital bed. It's meant to be an Easter egg from the comics. Basically, the same thing played out the same way in the comics. Echo winds up learning the truth. The Kingpin was responsible for her father's death, tries to kill him, but only wounds him in the eye. In the Daredevil comics, when Kingpin came back after this moment, he lost temporary use of both of his eyes, not just one. It was meant to be ironic because Daredevil is blind. I think the way that you explain him surviving this way and not losing his eye, like it's just damaged, he didn't lose the eye itself, is that she wasn't actually trying to kill, like either she backed off or he dodged just enough for it to graze his head. So either he's super quick or she's a bad shot, but I guess it's a little bit of both. Episode 2 was called Lowak. That's Echo's other ancestor that we see in the 1200s in Alabama. All the Choctaw tribes here at the beginning in this opening scene are playing stickball, which is one of the Choctaws' traditional sports that they used to play during this era. This is actually meant to be a thing based on real-life history. But in the context of the episode, the stakes of this game are that the losing tribe actually gets banished from these lands. So it's not like they're playing just for fun. Lowak has a vision of their ancestor Chafa, just like Echo does, and also gains a quick power-up, Captain America style, helping her win the game. This winds up happening to several people in Echo's ancestral line, basically foreshadowing it happening to her at the finale. Notice inside Scully's pawn shop here, Biscuits references Madripoor, saying a lot of knockoff material gets made there and imported by big companies on the cheap. Madripoor is that lawless island from the comics that Sharon Carter, Power Broker, works from inside the MCU. They visited during Falcon and Winter Soldier. It's also a big location in the Wolverine comics too, so big X-Men Easter egg there too. We learn a little bit more about Kingpin's shipping operation. It just seems like he uses it to ship all kinds of shady stuff, but in this particular case, like in these episodes, it's weapons mostly that he's shipping. After she plants the bomb, she gets another vision of Chafa helping free herself, getting a quick power-up. Back in New York, the Zane character is the local boss working under Kingpin, but I think he's meant to be part of the Black Knife Cartel, like you see the knife tattoo on some of their necks. They're another organization from the Bullseye comics. Part of the idea you have to remember is that Kingpin is boss of bosses, so like he controls a lot of other crime families around New York City. The explosive goes off, then obviously they come back to Choctaw Nation looking for revenge, kind of tracing down who could have done this. And because of Vicky, they find out about Echo. Episode 3 was called Tuklo. That's a reference to Echo's ancestor from the 1800s. They start with an old-timey backstory, like someone is watching this highlight reel that was actually taken during the 1800s. And it's all about the creation of the Light Horsemen, a type of internal police force Native American tribes would create to police their own lands. We see Echo's ancestor in her visions who became a Light Horseman. It's meant to foreshadow Echo trying to defend against all the different men who come for her later in the episode at the skate ring. There are a couple funny Easter eggs in the background, like just funny moments, the things that you pick up if you watch the episode a couple times. Like one of the women here is watching a YouTube channel called Militia Mommies. Obviously the phone call that Zane gets is from Kingpin staying his hand, like he's the one that orders them to cancel the hit and then heads to the reservation himself to try and bring Echo back. Arriving in person at the end of the episode, and this is meant to be the first time she's seen him since the events of Hawkeye, so she thought that she killed him, which is why she's so taken aback. Episode 4 was called Taloa, which is a reference to Echo's mother. That was her name. They show the flashback from the trailers when Kingpin took her to get ice cream, the events that we saw basically in the trailer. They had that entire scene in the trailers. They went up jumping forward in the timeline to that same 5-year time jump when she's still a teenager getting ready to take over the Tracksuit Bros, and he's just finished teaching her everything he wanted to teach her about his criminal empire. Kills the sign language translator he'd been using to speak with her, R.I.P., and later reveals that he actually created a translation device using technology. All this rather than just taking the time to learn sign language himself. This is like a very Kingpin way of solving a simple problem, like solving a problem in the most complicated way possible. He probably spent a fortune to accomplish this, rather than just take a little bit of time to actually learn sign language the old-fashioned way. Biscuits winds up making a Lion King reference. Then her grandmother starts to make her new supersuit based on Choctaw traditions, her family's traditions. Then Kingpin shows her his father's hammer that he'd used to kill him, that he'd been keeping this entire time since he was a young boy, and tells her the truth about what happened and challenges her to do the same thing. Like, I killed my father to free myself from all the pain that he was causing. You do the same thing now. Challenging her to kill him, which obviously she doesn't. Like, she actually genuinely tries to help him eventually by the end of the series. So a big part of the series was her genuinely learning to process everything bad that had happened in her life and make peace with it in a way that Kingpin didn't seem like he was able to do. Episode 5 was titled Maya, which is obviously Echo's name. It's meant to be the culmination of her internal journey of rediscovering her family, her history, her cosmic ancestors, her cosmic powers. They start with the flashback with her and her mother, and the bird is essentially meant to be her ancestor, but we do see that her mother is able to actually use cosmic powers to heal it. So when they referenced her mother being a healer, it wasn't just a metaphor, like she wasn't just a regular medic. She was actually running around using her cosmic powers to heal people. Notice later after she takes off, she's at a Roxxon gas station. They're a natural resources company in the MCU, also featured heavily in the comics. They've been featured in a bunch of Marvel movies, a bunch of Marvel TV series all over the place. We've never seen their CEO, but in the comics, their CEO is actually a man who turns into a Minotaur. He's a big part of the Thor comics. Generally, they're meant to be a pretty evil company. I know there'll be a bunch of questions about all the visions she has of her mother, so when she returns home, she actually literally sees her mother. It's not meant to be a hallucination. I think this actually gets into the whole concept of Moon Knight and life after death, like your consciousness just travels to another dimension after you die. And her mother's spirit is just communicating with her from the dimension that their people go to, the Choctaw people go to after they die. They don't really take the time in the series to actually explain what the name of this other dimension is, but I assume it's just based on real-life Choctaw traditions. Like during Moon Knight, because he has the contract with Khonshu, goes to the Egyptian afterlife, which is the Duat. Then they have the big powwow finale. She winds up rejecting Kingpin, like she refuses to go back with him and be like him. Taps into her ancestors' cosmic power, activating the same power in her grandmother and her cousin. Another little wrinkle in the power there too, like she passes it to the other female members in her line. I don't think the power works like this for all the women in the Choctaw tribe, just the members who can directly trace their lineage to this Chaffa character. Henry and Biscuits take out the rest of Kingpin's henchmen while the women use their powers to stop Kingpin the others inside the barn. Remember, that basically gives them a power-up on the level of something like Captain America's strength and speed. Generally, it seems like it's only meant to be temporary, and I don't know what the cooldown is on the ability. It seems like there's a pretty big cooldown. She winds up using her power to take Kingpin back into his memories of his father, beating his mother, other memories of violence that they shared together. To her credit, she does try to help him get past those traumatic memories, which it seems like he cannot. Like, he's just so messed up in the head that he takes off. Like, that's it, I've had enough of this. But if there was any confusion, it does seem like he forgives Echo for what she did trying to kill him, so it's not like he's going to try and kill her or force her to come back now. He's basically just made his peace with the fact that she's never coming back. Turned his mind onto other things, which we'll get to in a second because of the post-credits scene. They essentially end the series with her having a Fast and Furious style family dinner, like post all the Fast and Furious memes. It's all about family. It's almost the exact way that all the Fast and the Furious movies end. They have a special thank you card from Marvel to the Choctaw Nation who worked with them in real life to make it as accurate as possible to their history, their culture. And during the post-credit scene, Kingpin turns his attention from Echo to his real-world battles, like taking care of his empire, when he orders the meeting of the remaining heads of all the crime families in New York working for him, essentially all of his underbosses. The situation that he's worried about in danger of spiraling out of control is all the fallout that's been happening to the organization in the wake of the Hawkeye series, especially Echo blowing up all the weapons. And I also think this is supposed to have something to do with the events of the Secret Invasion series. Generally, things in America, at least in this part of the world, are starting to spiral out of control just in general, not just in Kingpin's purview in New York City. But while he's ordering that meeting, he sees the broadcast about the upcoming race for mayor of New York City and is inspired to run when the broadcasters say that there's no strong candidate, like it needs to be somebody who's a brawler, who's not a career politician and not afraid to fight with them. Making a lot of Daredevil references. Also, in the comics, Kingpin is also a prize fighter, just like Daredevil was. So the whole idea is they're going to be adapting the Mayor Kingpin storyline from the comics. In fact, they already filmed a lot of that storyline last year for Daredevil Born Again, but then Kevin Feige canceled all those episodes, kind of restarted the series, hired a bunch of the Punisher writers and the Loki writers to redo Daredevil Born Again. I already did a much longer video on the post-credit scene talking about how this sets up Daredevil Born Again, other Marvel Netflix Defenders characters that might show up during that. Some of this could change because they just started filming again, and there are going to be 18 episodes total. I don't know if there are any plans to bring Echo back on any of the live-action series. I'm sure somewhere she will come back, but I don't know if she's going to appear in any of the upcoming movies at any point. If there are any really big Easter eggs or connections to other series that you spotted that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments, and I'll do more videos for Daredevil Born Again as we get more footage. Click here for that full Daredevil Born Again teaser, and click here for that brand new Deadpool 3 teaser trailer. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.